On Bookish Mind, Season 08, Episode 06, we're exploring Debra Fine's The Fine Art of Small Talk, asking, what if the key to a great conversation isn't just what you say, but how profoundly you listen? It's a really interesting question, isn't it? Because it flips how we usually think about talking to people. We spend so much energy planning our next comment, that perfect story. But get this, research shows our brains can actually process around 300 words per minute. But most people, they only speak at about 150 to 200 words per minute.
Right, and that leaves this gap, this sort of excess capacity in your brain while someone else is talking. So the question is, what are you doing with that extra mental bandwidth?
Mhm.
Often, well, let's be honest, our minds wander. We start thinking about dinner or maybe that email we need to send, or sometimes we even tune into another chat nearby. And just like that, poof, you've missed something important. Maybe the core feeling, maybe the whole point.
Yeah, it happens to everyone. I was struck by what psychologist Carl Rogers said about this. He put it so clearly. The biggest block to personal conversation is one man's inability to listen intelligently, understandingly, and skillfully to another person.
Hmm.
It really puts the focus back on us, the listeners, doesn't it? It's not just about the speaker being clear.
Absolutely. And Dr. Ann Applebaum, she wrote about this deep human need for validation. She said basically that the feeling of not being heard is incredibly lonely, almost maddening. We have this huge need and hunger for validation,
Hmm.
which is why good listeners are so valued. I mean, she points out psychoanalysts literally make a living just by listening and validating people's experiences.
Hmm.
That shows you how powerful it is.
Oh, that makes total sense. And you've probably experienced this, right? Like you meet a friend who just needs to vent, you barely say anything, maybe a nod here and there. You just listen. And afterwards, they feel so much better. They thank you profusely, saying, that helped so much, even though you hardly spoke. It just shows listening can sometimes be way more powerful than talking.
Exactly. And that's what we're really diving into today. Because let's face it, in our world, with phones buzzing and endless distractions, truly attentive listening, it feels like it's becoming the exception, not the norm. So our mission here is to unpack what attentive listening really is. It's not just one thing. It actually has three key parts: visual, verbal, and mental. Getting these right, that's the game changer.
Okay, so let's tackle that excess brain power problem. How do we actively show we're listening? Let's start with the first pillar, the one you can actually see. Visual listening. It's interesting because hearing itself, the actual process, it's invisible, right? So when you're speaking, you're constantly looking for signs, for feedback that your message is landing. And visual cues, they're the fastest way to get that feedback, right? There's this great little story about an 8-year-old boy, Nicholas. He comes home super excited, tells his dad all about his day. Dad, art was great, painted mountains, played soccer, scored a goal, and pizza for lunch. You know, kid level enthusiasm. But his dad's reading the newspaper, and Nicholas says, Dad, you're not listening. And the dad, without looking up, rattles off the fact, yes, I am. Mountains, soccer goal, pizza. But Nicholas says, no, Dad, that's not it. You're not listening to me with your eyes.
That story hits it perfectly. Nicholas didn't just want his dad to repeat the facts. He wanted connection. He wanted to see his dad react, to see him invested, to get that visual validation. It really drives home what people like Ray Birdwhistle found, that nonverbal stuff, body language, expressions, it can carry like over 65% of the social meaning in a chat. It's huge. It's about the micro expressions, the tone, the posture, even how close you stand. It's a whole silent conversation happening.
Wow, 65%. Okay, so if nonverbals are that important, what are the good visual cues we should use? Well, number one, absolutely critical. Maintain eye contact. If you're looking around the room, at your phone, checking out the buffet, people notice, it feels like you're bored or maybe even a bit arrogant. Obviously, if you have to watch the door for someone, just say so. Hey, just keeping an eye out for my friend. That makes it okay. Then there's nodding. Simple, but so effective. It just signals, yep, I'm following you. Creates that feedback loop. And your overall body language, lean in a bit, keep your arms open, not crossed. Relax, face the person, smile genuinely. All signals, I'm interested, I'm here.
And just as important, we need to be aware of the negative signals our body might be sending, even if we don't mean to. Like crossed arms or legs. Even if you're just cold, it can read as defensive or closed off.
Mm-hmm.
Looking down, avoiding eye contact. That often signals, I don't want to interact, even if you're just shy. Resting your chin in your hand. Classic boredom pose. Put your hands on your hips can seem aggressive or unhappy. And then there are those fidgety things. Pointing, covering your mouth, playing with jewelry, tapping a pen, swinging your leg, glancing away constantly. They all kind of scream, I'm checked out.
It's so true. A lot of this body language stuff feels like it's on autopilot, just habits. So it does take real effort, real concentration to notice those nervous habits and switch to more positive, open gestures. But it definitely gets easier. Oh, and here's a little trick for eye contact. If direct staring feels intense, try looking at the spot right between the person's eyes. It looks like direct eye contact, but feels a bit less, well, starey for both of you.
That's a great tip. And another subtle technique is called pacing. It's about subtly matching the speaker's style to help them feel comfortable. So if someone speaks softly and slowly, maybe you lower your volume and slow down a bit too. You don't want to mimic them exactly. That'd be weird.
Yeah.
But just approximating their vibe can build rapport subconsciously and makes them feel more at ease.
Okay, so that covers the visual side. Now let's talk verbal listening, using actual words and sounds. Because while looking engaged is key, those verbal cues are the other half of the equation, right? If someone's completely silent, you really do start to wonder, are they even listening? It can feel like talking into a void. I totally get that. I remember calling my dad back when he lived in Buffalo. I was telling him something about the kids, and suddenly, just silence on his end. Complete silence. I had to stop and say, Dad, are you there? Hello? He was like, of course I'm here. I'm listening. Tell me about my grandkids. I said, but you weren't saying anything. I thought maybe you got buried in snow or something. He just said he didn't want to interrupt. But that silence, it leaves you hanging. It really does.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of how even good intentions, like not wanting to interrupt, can backfire without verbal feedback. So what are these verbal cues? They're often just short phrases or sounds. Things like, to show interest, tell me more, or wow, what was that like? Just to show you're processing. I see, got it. Positive responses. That's fascinating. Or good for you, for clarification. Sorry, I'm not quite clear on, or could you say more about, empathy. Oh, that sounds really tough, or that must have been frustrating. Probing a bit. What did you mean by that, or how did you handle that?
Yeah.
Asking for details. Can you give me an example? Or the flip side. So what's the big picture? Looking ahead or back. What do you think happens next? Or what happened right before that?
Yeah, all those little interjections, they do so much work. They tell the speaker, hey, I'm with you, keep going. It encourages them to share more. And honestly, it's great if you're talking to someone who's naturally chatty. You can let them do most of the talking and you just guide it a bit while really absorbing what they're saying.
Exactly. And these little verbal cues also make it easy to transition smoothly. You can say things like, oh, that reminds me of, or I actually just read something about that.
Yeah.
Or even a direct, hey, do you mind if I change the subject for a second? It keeps the flow going. But there's a balance, of course. Just sitting there silently nodding isn't enough either. Too little verbal feedback can also stall things out. The speaker might think they've lost you. So it's about active, responsive engagement.
Right. And going one step further than just responding, there's this really powerful technique, paraphrasing, basically stating the obvious by repeating specifics. When you actually say back what you heard, maybe in your own words, it just clears up any doubt about whether you understood. It's super useful when things are complicated or emotional, or especially if you disagree about something.
Oh, it's incredibly powerful. Think about those common arguments over, say, household chores. Maybe a wife feels her husband isn't pitching in. They talk, he says he'll help more. Weeks later, she's still frustrated. He says, but I am helping. I took out the trash last Thursday. See? She expected maybe a 50-50 split, he thought. Collecting trash counted as helping more. Same words, totally different meanings in their heads. If she'd paraphrased, like, okay, so when you say help more, you mean you'll take out the trash, or if you'd clarified, so my understanding is I just need to do the trash right, boom. The misunderstanding would have been obvious right away. Prevents so many issues, at home, at work, everywhere.
And it's not just for preventing misunderstandings, it's amazing for dealing with anger, too. You know how skilled customer service people do this? When someone's really upset, they calmly repeat the specifics of the complaint. It shows they're listening, it shows professionalism, and actually helps the angry person calm down because they feel truly heard. It changes the whole energy.
That's the golden rule, really. Before you jump to apologize, before you try to fix the problem, first, show them you've heard them. And repeating the specifics back to them. That's the clearest, most validating way to do it. It creates that space where you can actually solve things.
Okay, so we have visual cues, we have verbal cues.
Yeah.
But none of that really works. It's just acting without the third piece. Mental listening skills. This is the internal part, the actual focus. The retention. being a good conversation partner means you actually remember what was said, right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
This goes back to that excess mental capacity we started with. What are you doing with it? Remember that story about the business lunch?
Right.
Where I mentioned my second and current husband is a periodontist, and then, like, 5 minutes later, the other person asked me if I'm married? It was just clear evidence her mind had completely wandered off. We all do it, but it kills connection. So instead of drifting, you can consciously use that bandwidth. Ask yourself things like, what's the main point here? What's the feeling behind these words? How does this link to what they said earlier? That kind of internal work keeps you focused and builds real understanding.
That's such a good point. Listening isn't passive. It's an active choice, almost a required courtesy, as the book puts it. And if you find you genuinely can't focus, maybe you're stressed or tired, it's actually more respectful to politely excuse yourself for a moment than to sit there zoned out, potentially making the other person feel ignored. It really is about respect.
Precisely.
Hmm.
All three visual, verbal, mental skill wave, they work together. They signal the status of the conversation to your partner. Are you present? Are you engaged? Are you understanding? Are you valuing what they share? That's what these skills communicate.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. So let's try to boil this down.
Okay.
If people want to become those prized listeners we talked about, what are the key takeaways? We've got about 10 tips here for really top-notch listening. First, you got to want to listen. Have the interest, the focus, the self-discipline.
Second, give those cues. Use both the visual nods and eye contact and the verbal uh-huhs and tell me mores. Show you're tracking.
Third, anticipate excellence. Go in expecting to hear something interesting or valuable. Your attitude makes a difference.
Fourth, be a whole body listener. Ears, yes, but also eyes for the nonverbals and your heart for empathy. Listen with everything you've got.
Fifth, take notes if it's appropriate. It helps you remember, sure, but it also sends a strong signal. What you're saying is important.
Sixth, listen now. Plan to report later. Decide you'll tell someone else what you learned. It actually makes your brain work harder to retain it.
Seventh, build rapport by pacing. Subtly match the speaker's energy, their speed, their gestures. It creates comfort.
Eighth, control distractions. Turn off the phone ringer, close unnecessary tabs, and consciously push aside those distracting internal thoughts. Make space to listen.
Ninth, generously give the gift of listening. See it that way as an act of generosity. It's incredibly powerful.
And 10th, maybe the most crucial, be present, fight the mental drift. Don't plan your reply while they're talking. Just be there in the moment.
So wrapping this all up, what we've really explored in this deep dive is how listening goes way beyond just passively hearing sounds. It's this active, involved process using our eyes, our words, our minds. And it's fundamentally about validating, connecting, and achieving clarity. It's about really tuning in.
Absolutely. When you start consciously working on these visual, verbal, and mental skills, it can genuinely change your conversations, make them richer, deeper, more meaningful. It's about shifting from just waiting to talk to truly being engaged and showing you care.
So here's something to think about. Considering how much communication isn't words and how much we all need to feel validated, how might intentionally focusing on just one of these techniques, maybe better eye contact, maybe paraphrasing more, how might that profoundly shift your next important conversation? Not just for you, but for the person speaking.